Welcome to our webinar on ESG trends for 2026 and beyond, and insights into ESG manager qualification. Please allow me to go through some housekeeping before we start. I'm Yuen, your host for today. All lines will be muted during the webinar. If you have any questions, please submit your question in the Q&A chat box. The webinar will be recorded, and we will be sharing the recording and slides with all attendees after the webinar. At the end of the webinar, we will appreciate if you complete the feedback survey before you leave. Our speakers for today is Mr. Wan Yang, Head of Sustainability Solution for APAC at BSI, and Mr. Poon Yuen, Training Director for APAC at BSI. Without further ado, I'll hand over to Wan Yang for his sharing. Over to you, Wan Yang.
Thank you, Yuen. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this webinar. Today, I'm very happy to share with you our insights for the ESG trends, global trends to watch in 2026 and beyond. Okay. Next page, please. So for today, I think my part, I will focus on two things. What are the global trends in 2026 and beyond? And the next section, I will focus on the standard ESG standards. Everyone knows that ESG standards really matter, right? So why ESG standards matter and what we can do, by utilizing standards to improve our disclosure and performance. And the last section, I will invite my colleague, Mr. Poon, to introduce the ESG manager qualification training course. Next page, please. So let's come to section number one. What are the global trends in 2026 and beyond? Everybody knows that we are now, country representatives are in Belém, Brazil. They convene for climate change in Brazil, right? So this year's theme is COP for implementation. All right. So I think in terms of implementation, ESG is a very good lever, for companies to improve your sustainability towards towards SDGs and other international frameworks. So before I start introducing the trends, I think I probably need to give you some basic idea, fundamental conceptions. What do ESG stand for, respectively? I think many of you, especially veterans in this area, have a very good understanding of ESG. But for some beginners, maybe I need to spend 1 minute to explain what E, S, and G stand for. Next page, please. So apparently E stands for environmental, okay? Organization's ecological environmental performance and its efforts to minimize environmental impact. For example, like your energy consumption, your carbon emissions, and your water usage, those are related to environment and have an impact on our environment, on the climate, right? S stands for social. So the social aspect of an organization, including relationship management with employees, suppliers, customers, and communities affected by your operations. All right. So for S, it relates to how a company treat your employees. What are the human rights conditions in your company, working conditions, so on and so forth, and also your relationship with local communities, with your customers, so on and so forth. And G stands for governance, okay? It means your organization's leadership, internal controls, audits, and overall corporate governance strategies. For example, do you have a governance structure in your company to very very smoothly manage the sustainability related issues, for example, like compliance, for example, like anti-bribery, for example, like cybersecurity, so on and so forth. Okay, so ESG stands for 3 pillars of ESG. What we are talking about ESG, basically environmental, social, and governance. Next page, please. Okay, now we enter into the sharing of global trends for 2026 about ESG. Okay, we have 9 trends to share with you. So trend number 1, okay, ESG reporting is now business as usual. Let us reflect like 3 or 5 years ago when we talk about ESG, especially to a lot of SMEs. I think a lot of people don't know what ESG is about and why they need to report their ESG performance. Okay, but nowadays the whole landscape has totally changed. It has been the mainstreamed as a mainstream concept for many corporate partners, for a lot of regulators and NGOs and communities. You can see I just took some numbers from KPMG report. Okay, especially nowadays in Asia Pacific, from 2022 and 2024. In 2022, 89% big companies published their ESG report, and last year, 92% of those companies published their ESG report. This is almost the same situation in North America. Okay, I explain to you, although especially the US is undergoing a backlash, okay, they are rolling back, but still for the corporate, they are still, have a very high percentage to disclose their ESG performance. Europe, 81%. So for Asia Pacific, almost, more than 90% of our big companies, they are publishing their ESG reports. So that's ESG reporting has become the business as usual. I believe many of you, because you are representing companies, there are many of your companies probably, have been publishing your ESG report. And November, December, I think that's the seasons for you to plan for ESG disclosure. Okay, next page. Trend number 2. Trend number 2. For ESG, I think almost all the companies, they regard climate energy as number 1 material topic, right? So I read many ESG reports. Almost every ESG report, put climate energy as the number 1 material topic for disclosure. All right. So to achieve carbon neutrality is the target for all human beings. Is probably I think one of the top crisis for all human beings. So every company, they regard climate energy as number 1 material topic. And net zero, okay, for net zero, remember this statement. It is the most certain goal of human society. Most countries, I think all the ASEAN countries, set 2050 as the target year for net zero, right? So it's a long-lasting journey, will last for 25 years at least, all right? And will attract the largest investment in human history, all right? So net zero or low carbon it's not just the one sector. It's a sector which empower or transform our whole society and economy, right? For example, like if you are a civil engineering experts, okay, for the buildings we construct in future, we need to consider energy efficiency or how to reduce the carbon emission in the process. So it's actually transforming. Transport is another example, right? We are now, in the process of transforming the whole transportation sector, by introducing more, EVs, for example, right? So it will attract largest investment in human history. Okay. And okay, previous page, please. I haven't finish. Yeah. So 2 years ago in Dubai's COP28, okay, countries, more than 160 countries, reached the consensus. So they have been determined to transition away from fossil fuel. And all the countries decided to triple renewables and double energy efficiency by 2030. So that's a very ambitious, plan for all of us. Next page, please. The third trend is product carbon footprint gains traction. Okay, so in the past 3 to 5 years, many companies have quantify your organizational level greenhouse gas emissions. Then what is the next wave? The next wave is for product carbon footprint. Okay, there are several key drivers for us to quantify product carbon footprint. The first driver is market access. For example, EU new battery regulation requires disclosure of carbon footprint of batteries entering EU market. Okay, so that's just one small example, one small case. Okay, it has become more common in many advanced markets. There are more requirements for that. The second driver is the buyer's requirement. Also, I put one example over here. IKEA aspires to achieve 80% reduction on product carbon footprint. So they will absolutely cascade this target to their suppliers. Ask them to provide data first, then ask them to reduce their product carbon footprint. All right. So in ASEAN and the wider APAC, a lot of countries are the suppliers of multinational companies, of the top brands, right? So if we want to continue our partnership, our business with those top brands, we need to reduce the carbon emission of the products we sell to our customers, our clients. So otherwise, you will be removed from the suppliers list, okay? And the third driver is regulators' mandate, okay? In the past 2 years, China central and provincial governments launched a variety of new initiatives to promote product carbon footprint. I think for other countries, especially ASEAN countries, there might be similar initiatives or policies. But I think in the next 3 to 5 years, this will be replicated to more APAC countries, including ASEAN countries, will be scaled up. Next page, please. So trend number 4, address the challenge of Scope 3 emissions. Right, for many companies, especially big companies, Scope 3 is the pain point. All right, I share with you some numbers. Okay, the big companies. For Apple, 99% of their emissions come from Scope 3. Google, the percentage is 75. Microsoft, 97, Alibaba, 64, Amazon, 75. So you can see that the key part of the emissions for big companies comes from Scope 3. Currently, unfortunately, only 15% of big companies report on Scope 3 emissions. Why? Because it's too complicated. It's not easy, very challenging, right, to collect the data and also to effectively manage your suppliers for Scope 3 emissions. So we have observed worldwide, globally, more and more companies and also the communities, the international communities, are attaching more importance to Scope 3 emissions. We will see there will be more training, more requirements from your customers and clients. Okay, next page, please. All right, I think if you are familiar with ESG disclosures, probably you will be struggling with international disclosure standards. There are too many actually, right? But in the past couple of years, we have seen the convergence of a variety of international standards into the three mainstream standards. Okay, the first one is GRI. GRI standard is used by more than 78% of big companies. So it's still the very dominant standard in terms of ESG disclosure. All right. And most comprehensive, because GI standards is most comprehensive and mature so far. And ESRS, okay, it's a under CSRD. It's a EU standard for ESG disclosure. It's for mandatory requirement. It's for double materiality, estimated to cover 50,000 companies by 2028. Okay, but today, this year, things has changed because I will share with you later. Because EU has decided to simplify ESRS, and much fewer companies will be scoped in for ESRS disclosure. Okay, but still, ESRS, the strength for ESRS is it's a mandatory requirement. Okay. And ISSB is another mainstream disclosure standard. Okay, so IFRS has consolidated many international standards, for example, like VRF, CDSB, TCFD. Okay, so endorsed by IOSOC and a lot of stock exchange regulators worldwide. Okay. So mainly ISSB mainly focus on financial materiality. Okay, so required by stock exchange regulators. So it's mandatory. All right. So the trend now in 2026, I think a lot of companies actually are struggling because with all those standards, because it's a little complicated. Too many compliance requirements. So there is a demand for interoperability and simplification. So I think 2026, the international community, standards organizations, they will work together to simplify and to make sure, those standards can interoperate with one another. Next page, please. Trend number 6 is about supply chain. Okay, so supply chain nowadays has been disrupted due to geopolitical context. Okay, let's be honest. So a lot of big companies, especially, are concerned about this supply chain disruptions. In the meantime, supply chain management is critical for sustainability management. All right. So we need to, as I explained to you in scope 3 emissions, the challenge of scope 3. So if you want to be sustainable, you need to effectively manage your suppliers. Okay, because a lot of you probably representing the companies who are suppliers of top brands. So I think in 2026 there will be higher expectations for us to become more sustainable, right? So I think we need to be front-loaded. We need to do preparations for that requirement from now. Okay, for example, to establish your data management system, to internally to build the team, to give certain budget or resources for you to manage your sustainability data. All right. Then your client, your buyers will ask you to provide all those data to them, to ask you to manage your sustainability more effectively in 2026. Next page, please. Okay, so nature and biodiversity will be mainstreamed in 2026. Probably you have heard about TNFD. Okay, this is an initiative in parallel with TCFD. Okay, TCFD is Task Force for Climate-related Financial Disclosure. TNFD stands for Task Force for Nature-related Financial Disclosure. All right. So far, 733 organizations have adopted TNFD. Okay, especially for example, like petrochemical companies. Okay, a new project, project will probably have impact on biodiversity and nature. And for renewables, that's the same. For example, like the wind farm. Okay, so a wind farm, whether it will have impacts on the birds, on the biodiversity in the local community. All right. So TNFD in 2026 and beyond will, I think, be mainstreamed. And in EU, there is a regulation called EUDR. This will be effective in 2026. EUDR has been postponed. Okay, has been postponed. Originally, they planned to be for this regulation to be effective in 2024, then postponed to 2025, and now has been postponed to 2026. In the meantime, International Standards Organization, ISO, in the past several months, they have published a set of standards on nature and biodiversity management. Okay, one standard is called ISO 14054. It's about natural capital accounting. And the other standard is ISO 17298. It's about biodiversity in strategy and operations. I strongly recommend like petrochemical or petroleum, companies, oil and gas companies adopt ISO 17298. Okay, and also if you are planning for a wind farm or solar farm, especially offshore wind farm, probably you need to consider this standard. Next page, please. All right. In 2024, 2025, especially 2025, we have experienced very exciting moment for AI, artificial intelligence. Okay, this is I think a very exciting year. 2025 is a very exciting year for the development of artificial intelligence. Now we have observed that there is a confluence of digitalization and decarbonization. On the one hand, AI enables more effective measures for emission reductions. I think many of the big companies, for example, you collect data, not manually through Excel. Many of your companies have already established a digital platform to manage your ESG or carbon. Okay, and also, for example, AI can help predict for example, the power, the wind power. Okay, so that it can help smooth the power supply for the grid. Okay, so AI absolutely can play an important role to help us to reduce carbon emissions. At the same time, the applications of AI also creates much more emissions than before. Okay, for example, some top brands like Microsoft, Google, they have committed to reach carbon. I remember Microsoft committed to reach carbon negative by 2030, and Google and Amazon and other top tech companies, have made similar commitments. But to be honest, it's very hard for them to reach the target. The reason is AI. In the past 2 or 3 years, AI developed very quickly. So a lot of new data centers were built. So those data centers consume huge amount of energy, especially hyperscale data centers. All right, so there are, I think we need to attach importance to this. Okay, this is a new phenomenon, new wave of energy consumption for human society. Next page, please. Okay, the last trend I want to share with you is, I think everyone probably knows it, the rollback in the US and slowdown in EU. So in January, the new administration came into power, the first thing they do is to quit the Paris Agreement, and U.S. Has already scrapped renewables and supports fossil fuel. I mean, from political perspective, okay. But a lot of companies, especially multinational companies, they have operations worldwide. For example, in China, in Europe, they still use a lot of renewables. And for EU released a watered-down version of Omnibus proposal for sustainability reporting. And EU also postponed and simplified the implementation of EUDR. And also for CBAM, the same situation. The rationale is to reduce the workload for EU's companies. So 90% of EU importers will be exempt from CBAM. Okay, CBAM is carbon border adjustment mechanism. Okay, so we have observed a certain level of slowdown, but remain optimistic in a longer term. Okay, so that's how I feel. As business fluctuates in cycle, right? While sustainability is the ultimate solution for human society, we have no other alternative, besides sustainability for us all as human society. Next page, please. So the next section, I will quickly go through with you why ESG standards matter. Okay, next page. So what is standard? Okay, previous page. What is a standard? Standard is the international language which inspires trust. Okay, I think English is an international standard, but international language. Standard is another international language. For example, if you are investing in a different country, okay, so if you want to show people you have achieved carbon neutrality, what do? You show them a certificate, right? Probably certified by BSI. Okay, you have achieved carbon neutrality. It's ISO 14068. Then everybody, if they see your certificate, they will immediately understand your company has achieved carbon neutrality. You don't have to say anything else. Okay, so international standard is a common international language for us all, which inspires trust. Next page, please. So why should we care about standard and certification? Where does standard come from? Standard is not come from vacuum, okay? It's a summary of best practices by many top companies worldwide. So if you can adopt a standard, absolutely can help you improve your management. Standard and certification can help build trust, okay? And also in some markets, they need certain level of compliance. So if you have a certificate from independent certification bodies can help you comply with certain requirements or mandatory directives. Your buyer's requirement, okay? International buyers require verified results of sustainability. And investors demand. Some of the investors, they also demand a verified ESG data to avoid risk. And the final factor is market access. I have raised the example of EU. If you don't have certain certificate or certain certification against certain standards, you won't be able to access their markets. Next page, please. All right. So ESG is a complicated system, okay? But I think there are three pillars of the ESG infrastructure. The first pillar is laws and regulations. All right. The second pillar is data. The last pillar is standards. So let's focus on standards for a moment, because there are too many different kinds of standards for ESG. So I categorize them into four types of ESG standards. The first type is a group of standards for performance improvement. And there are certain standards for disclosure, and also standards for assurance and standards for rating framework. Okay, let's go through them one by one. Next page, please. So a lot of companies approach me, ask, ESG is a very, high level and an abstract conception. How do we do? Where do we start? Okay, so actually there are many standards behind E, S, and G. For example, if you want to improve your environment management or greenhouse gas management or energy management, environment management system, we have ISO 14000. And greenhouse gas management, we have standards like GH protocol, 14064 Part 1, so on and so forth, right? Energy management, we have ISO 40,000. Okay. For social, the same thing. If you want to manage your suppliers, your procurement, there is a standard called ISO 20,400. And governance, if you want to, for example, improve your cybersecurity, there are standards like 27,000 and ISO 27,701. So those are the standards, are important levers for you to improve your performance. So I think there is a type of standards called ESG performance standards. Next page, please. Also, there are disclosure standards. Okay, needless to say, I think I have already explained that to you. GRI, ISSB, ESIS, TCFD, and stock exchange guidelines. All those are the standards for you to disclose your ESG reports. Next page, please. There are certain standards for us, for the assurers, for certification bodies to use to assure your ESG disclosure. One important standard is called AA 1000. The other ones are ISC 3000, or the latest version is called ISSA 5000. Next page, please. Okay, the last, I will focus on one important ISO standard called IW48. This standard was released in last COP. In last COP. So it's a pretty new standard for ESG. It's probably so far the only ISO standard for ESG. Okay, just as the slogan, the theme for this year's COP, this standard only focuses on the framework for implementation. Okay, implementation. It's not for disclosure, it's for implementation. Provides a high-level framework and principles to guide ESG implementation and embedding within organizational culture. Okay, so it's applicable to all types, all sizes, all sectors and regions. Okay, and focus on implementation. Okay, not just reporting. Next page, please. So here you can see the overarching structure of the standard. So on the top are ESG principles, values, okay? And the three pillars, E, S, and G. And under ESG, there are indicators to make sure your ESG management is evidence-based. And the very foundation is verification and assurance. So that's the structure of IW48, okay? It's complementary and interoperable with existing voluntary and regulatory reporting frameworks to facilitate global harmonization. So it's not a separate, it's not a siloed, standard. Actually, it works and harmonizes with a lot of existing standards. Okay, next page, please. Next page. Okay, so this standard introduces a very interesting concept called ESG maturity journey. Okay, so ESG is not a static status. Okay, it's not a static. Actually, it's a moving journey. Most importantly, companies need to build a proactive culture. Then, you go through a journey of growth and deepening ESG maturity, integrating continual improvement. Okay, next page, please. So the very first step is minimum standards in ESG. I think more than half of half of the companies implementing ESG is in step one. Okay, just to meet minimum standards, minimum requirements. And then ESG compliance. So organizations are going through the motions. Reporting and conformity are done in mechanical, box-ticking way, often lacking strategic focus. Okay, many companies also, I think probably 80%, 70-80% are in step 1 and step 2. And step 3, level 3 is developing ESG. Organizations begin to see the competitive value of ESG. So ESG is not standalone. It actually can be positioned as a win-win situation. So your perfect ESG performance can help you to develop your business interest. And the top level is value-led ESG. So that's the top level. So it is the ultimate stage. Organizations are internally committed to ESG with community and environmental outcomes as core to their objectives. I think that's the ideal level for all the companies. So I think this journey is very important for sustainability or ESG managers to understand, and how you can communicate with your boss, with the senior management executives in your company, why we want to develop values-led ESG, why ESG is a win-win with our business interest. Next page, please. I will end my presentation by quoting our CEO, the CEO of BSI. Okay, trust comes on foot but leaves by Ferrari, especially in the ESG area. Okay, it's easy. It's not difficult. It's not very easy to build trust with our customers, with our buyers, with our government regulators. But for one small thing you don't do correctly, you will immediately lose the trust with your stakeholders. So the trust will leave by Ferrari. I hope we can work together in future, to help you to build your trust with your stakeholder groups. Okay, thank you for listening. That's the end of my presentation. Next, I will hand it over to my colleague, Mr. Poon, to elaborate on a special program developed by BSI, which is called ESG Manager Qualifications.
Thanks, Wang Yang.
Mr. Poon, over to you.
Yep, thank you, Wang Yang. Hi, everyone. I think, first of all, I'd like to appreciate Wang Yang a lot of good sharing just now. I think we all learned from Wang Yang that ESG is not just about environment, ecological impact. It's not just about social. It's not just about governance. It's the juggling of these 3 aspects while we're managing our business or while we're managing our organization. And this process is not a one-way journey. It's not just about what your organization think about. We need to think about some internal and external. And external, we talk about local, because we do have some country-specific regulation. We do have some regional kind of requirements. External, we do have customer, we do have international development. So this process is definitely not straightforward. And I also really like the maturity journey shared by Wang Yang. As he mentioned just now, one of the trends is that the ESG reporting is going to be the business as usual. An organization is moving towards from just a reporting to start to think about how this ESG add value to our organization in terms of how we managing our organization. And in BSI, we noticed this unique trend for months. And we spent time to discuss with a lot of internal stakeholders. And we decided we want to launch ESG Manager Qualification. And I think what we are looking at, later on I will explain why we are not just launching a course, we are launching a qualification, because we see there's a need. Now, this slide, you can see we have a good news and bad news to share. Now, the good news is, if you are in the ESG world, the good news is that the jobs are booming. So depend what maturity level you are in your country, the ESG job hiring advertisement, the recruitment portal keep having a lot opening about ESG job. So that's definitely a good news. But for organization level, that's the bad news. Because despite we have put up that advertisement for months, we don't have the right candidate. And that's where we are saying that the talent is in short supply. And that's where we can see in some of the report by all this professional HR portal and so on. Now, what is all this challenge about? Next slide, please. So we can see in terms of challenges, we definitely have a talent shortage and skill gap. Now, because of this shortage, a lot of organizations try to compromise that I'm hiring an ESG manager, but no one is applying with that right skill of ESG. Eventually, I hire someone with very specialized on E or S or G. And when this person on board, I then close the skill gap. And there are also some challenges in terms of expectation. You know, some employer or employee, they are some mismatch because on employer perspective, if they are in a rushing stage, they hire someone looking forward some immediate expertise. You tell me what to do. But there's a lot of talent in the market. It's not just about reporting. It's not just about telling me what to do. It's about what we are looking forward as an organization on the ESG perspective. And because of all this mismatch, is a long hiring cycle, and is a rising salary demand and adding cost to the organization. And we can also realize that there are some regional disparity. Some organized country where you are in a more matured ESG culture, you will then see that many talents is available. So your challenge is how can you pay more to attract the right talent to join your organization? But you are in a region that ESG is just at the beginning of the journey, in the beginning of the maturity journey. You probably are having the issue that how can I get someone that familiar with all the ESG together? And all these challenges raising the need for us to have more training, more upskilling challenges to the organization. Now, because of this, I think that's the reason why we have a topic about a qualification program. But let's see on the next slide. Now, we see there's a lot of demand on ESG training, but it's not just about ESG training, because we don't want just to attend a course to understand what's E, what's S, what's G. We want to attend a program that can give us the competency and confidence to help our organization to manage ESG holistically. Now, in the market, there's also a demand that I'm not just looking for whether you have an ESG qualification. If you are a certified ESG manager, that's the study. What you can see from here is that they usually command a better salary. So that's another good news if you are in this field. So let's look into the next slide about the BSI ESG manager qualification. Because when we design this program, there's a lot of background information in our mind. I mean, the first thing definitely first and foremost is that we want to design a qualification program that giving a complete comprehensive learning pathway for whoever that in this ESG role. We don't want after you attend after the first program, then at the end of the program, you are told that, oh, in order to learn this S, you need to attend another program. And after you attend that, you need to another program. So it seems to be like a piecemeal training program. So in BSI ESG manager qualification, our design intent is that we want to give a complete learning pathway. And our complete learning pathway, we don't want also based on BSI interpretation. That's why we actually guided by IWA 48 as shared by Wan Yang just now. It's an international framework. It's an international reference. And of course, BSI have a privilege to lead that standard development. And hence, we are in a better position to come in and share in that in a more holistic way. And if you can see on the point number 3, I think that's one of the uniqueness, because to be frank, there are many ESG training programs in the market. I think that's where I really acknowledge. But not all are actually based on the standard-based ESG qualification. Now, why standard-based ESG qualification is important? You remember, we talk about from compliant to value-led ESG journey. So we are not just talk about ESG is just about during the reporting period. ESG should be the way how we manage our day-to-day organization of business. And we don't want to reinvent the wheel to have another system just to talk about ESG together. And it's quite common for organization nowadays to to have certified with many management system standard, whether it's environment, whether it's social, whether it's governance. All this maybe we didn't connect the dot yet with ESG reporting, ESG journey. And in this program is where we will, based on that standard-based ESG framework, to help the organization to have that holistic view, how we can embed the management system certification throughout the whole ESG journey. And on the point number 4, we are recognized that the market is looking for a competent ESG manager. So we don't want just to have a few day program and after that you go back organization, you do your own. So we have a very extensive qualification, including examination, to just ensure that that person, whoever attend our program, really understand, really take whatever learning and to grab that, get that recognition in the market. And of course, a good thing in BSI ESG manager qualification is that that's ESG manager is just a beginning. After that, if you are interested on certain topic, like for example, you are focusing on product carbon footprint, we have a dedicated program just focusing on product carbon footprint. So you can do all the connect from something, and then you can narrow down with a deeper knowledge on certain subject. So can I see the next slide? Just to give everyone the framework. How is BSI qualification? So as simple as step 1, 2, 3. Now what you see on this screen is a mark of trust that has been designed by BSI to give recognition to the delegate who complete our program. So the journey starts from on the left, where if you complete a certain training days of program, you will then complete the step 1 to get an ESG manager mark of trust. And you can display this mark of trust in your social media, in your business card, if you are still using a business card, to let your colleague, to let your supplier, to let your customer, knowing that you have completed the ESG qualification program with BSI. So that's kind of recognition. And of course, after the first step, if you realize that you want to move on to have more deeper knowledge, and this is where we have an ESG manager advanced mark of trust. So you can see the advanced on the bottom words. And after complete this ESG manager advanced, if you think that it's time for you to move on to a more holistic global context on ESG, and this is where we have the step 3, ESG manager qualification. Now, next slide, we probably can look into this step 1 in a more detail. Now, how to get this step 1, how to get this first mark of trust badge is where you need to attend a 3-day continuous training program. And that training program, 3-day, what we are covering is a very fundamental of ESG strategic management and disclosure, where we will cover some of the framework. We will explain something on the IWA 48 based on that. We will give you the knowledge about the disclosure standard, whether it's ISSB, TCFD, all those disclosure standards that we have currently right now in the market. And that will give you the foundation, right? And that's, of course, this has no prerequisite as long as you are just appointed as an ESG person in charge, or you're just appointed as an ESG team member or team leader by your organization, and you are looking for a training program to give you the holistic view about what all this ESG is about. This is good for you because it's just 3-day. Now, if you are at a senior level, you are in a very senior level in the organization, and you know about all this reporting, you know about the regulation that need you to know something, and you want to have something that give you a holistic, this is also a good intro for you. After this, you can understand, have conversation with your ESG team within your organization. And of course, at the end of the program, there's an exam. In order to get that mark of trust, you have to pass through that exam. That's a very important recognition about your knowledge on the area that we talk about. Now, after step 1, probably you back to your organization for a few months, and then you realize that, wow, that's good. I'm ready to move on to the step 2, is where in our ESG Manager Advanced, is a longer duration, is a 4-day training, where we cover all the essential E, S, and G topic, as you can see from that. Now, this advanced course is now go into a more hands-on knowledge about what are the available key international standard cover all this ESG topic. Now, it would be good. This is definitely helpful for the organization that Currently, you're certified with certain standard like 41,000, 45,000, or whatever standard, and you're looking for what other standard I should go for in order to complete the ESG juggling, right? And this will give you that holistic view for you to actually help you to establish a framework or implement or maintaining that framework. But of course, for step 2, there's a prerequisite. You can see there, you have to complete the first step. Then if you get past the exam, you get the amount of trust, you can then move into the step 2. And next slide, we will cover the step 3, where step 3 is what we call professional. So step 3, probably some of the client can attend few months after you attend the advance. You start to deploy the ESG, you start to connect the dot with all your management system standard. You then start to look into how are we now in our organization compared with the global ESG trend and some of the cutting edge topic as mentioned by, shared with Wan Yang, some of the trend in 2026. And in this 4-day program, we will cover that holistic view on the ESG, whether it's neutrality, whether it's water efficiency, whether it's circular economy, or whether it's a modern slavery, supply chain management. So all these topics we will then put together in this 4-day program. And of course, the prerequisite is that you must complete the advance because you need to know the basic of the standard. Then you only move on to the step 3. So if you complete this 4-day program, good job, well done. But that's the last exam you need to take before you get this professional grade. And if you complete all this together, can I see the next slide? Is where you will have the 3 batch together. So I hope this gives you a very holistic view about BSI newly launched ESG Manager Qualification Pathway. Now, when I say newly launched, it's really this month. We start to launch after months of talking and design to the subject matter expert, to the technical know-how team. We've realized and we have designed this 3-day, 4-day program, which we believe is good enough. Not too long, not too short, but it's cover all the essential needs and also some of the advanced topic that you need. So if someone have completed step 1, 2, 3, you can display this 3 mark of trust in your business card, in your social media to demonstrate your competency, your credential in this ESG qualification. So I hope that's clear enough. But if you are keen to know more about how you're going to attend this program, how you're going to register, feel free to connect our local team, whichever country you are, whichever region that you are. Our team can provide more detail. But I think more important thing is that this program is definitely helpful. If you are newly appointed as an ESG team member or ESG team leader, you need to really look into all this before you embark into 2026, right? Or with all this challenge, or you are currently managing the ESG, but you're moving towards the maturity cycle to look into what is the value add culture. How can we bring ESG to the next level? That ESG is not just about reporting. ESG is about how we manage our organization in a very efficient and effective way. This will also give you the needed knowledge to achieve that important task for your organization. So with that, I've shared my part, but I'll leave it to the host, Yuen, to lead the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wan Yang and Mr. Poon, for your very insightful sharing. We definitely received some questions and some even prior to the webinar during registration stage. Maybe I'll start off with the first question very quickly. I think this one would be addressed to Wan Yang. How can organization address scope 3 emission when data from supplier is often incomplete or inconsistent? Maybe I'll stop sharing and we will see Wan Yang and Mr. Poon online. Yeah.
I think the most important thing is to manage the suppliers, the supply chain more effectively. First of all, for example, there needs to be codes of conducts for the suppliers. There also need to be some rules or policies to manage your suppliers. That's for one. Basically to set requirements for your suppliers. Secondly, I think for top companies, if you want to address your scope 3, you probably need to provide capacity building opportunities for your suppliers. And also you work closely with your supplier. One example I can give is the scope 3 emissions of BSI. Actually, we are aiming to achieve net zero by 2030. It's our scope 3 emissions mainly come from transportation, travel. Okay, so we work with the vendor, for example, the hotels or the taxi companies. We work with them very actively, so that they could provide data to us. And we have been very clear to give them the requirements. If you want to work with us at the corporate vendors, probably you need to provide 1, 2, 3, those kind of things. Otherwise, we will switch to work with others. So those are just maybe some tips for you to consider to manage your scope 3.
I have another question for you, Wanyang, since you're online. So what strategy can small and medium enterprises adopt to comply with upcoming regulation like EUDR and the EU battery regulation without incurring high costs? I think that's the part we want to emphasize on, how to manage the cost part.
Okay, I think there needs to be some investment, that's for sure. I mean, I want to use investment rather than cost, because cost it's gone. Okay, we are not collected back. But for investment, for example, if you are having a very good data quality for your buyers, okay, and you have very good sustainability performance, you can get more contracts from your clients, and you can have some better relationship with the government agencies, for example. So I think I would rather see it as an investment rather than cost. At the same time, I think you need to have a capable team which can solve the problem with lower cost but very good results. I think that's the key for SMEs to have better sustainability performance. Just 2 examples. There are probably many more measures you can take to reduce the cost, at the same time improve your sustainability.
Thank you, Wanyang. We have a few questions for Mr. Poon as well regarding the ESG manager qualification. So I'll combine 2 questions into one. So is the ESG manager qualification an internationally recognized qualification, and whether the exam is online or written test?
Yep, I think that's of course, definitely a very important question. Now, BSI is a global international organization. I think that's for sure. That's why I think just now when I shared the IWA 48, that document was led by BSI during that standard development on IWA 48. So our program is actually based on our global expertise on BSI colleague that's working together on all this thing. So I believe this is definitely a global recognition program, because we don't just launch it over in particular country. We launch this program globally. So if you're attending this program, if your colleague attending in other part of the world, in Europe or in America, you are going to have the same training program. You're going to have the same exam. I think that's for sure. Now, in terms of the exam, it depends whether your training is a remote training or your training is actually a physical training. But we have both. Don't worry. I think don't worry too much about exam. I know you are very concerned about exam, but that's something that we can manage together, depending on which training program that you are signed on with. I hope that clarifies.
Yeah. I think one of the questions in the chat box is that just like what you mentioned during your presentation, there are other ESG manager or sustainability officer training program elsewhere, right? And I think one of our key differentiator is that our program is based on IWA and it's internationally recognized. Maybe you can just recap again, maybe 1 or 2 more advantages of our program as a key differentiator to those outside of BSI.
Yeah, sure. That's why I want to highlight the key. Our strength in this BSI ESG manager qualification is the only, I would say, because I've done a lot of research on the market, is the only one that is a very standard-based ESG program. Now, why standard-based is important? Because if you are, as what mentioned on the maturity journey, if you are towards not just talking about ESG reporting, you are towards talk about how can I use ESG to optimize my organization performance. Then you need to look into the ESG to incorporate with your current management system certification. And the good thing about management system certification is that it's always based on the continual improvement journey. All right, there's always a PDCA, and it's always based on the risk-based concept. So if you incorporate all this together, then you would really have a situation where ESG is not just a reporting. ESG is the way how we manage our organization. So that's our strength. That's why we want to tap on the management system as a standard-based ESG training program.
Mr. Poon, there's another question I find very interesting. So for people who are not currently ESG professionals, so for example, like a HR professional who is interested to sign up for this course, so they're wondering if there's any specific requirement, like do you have basic understanding about ESG, or you can start with our most basic program straight away?
Yeah, I think we realize there's a different needs. That's why we use step 1, 2, 3. Step 1 is for someone that you are really new, right? But you really want to learn, because ESG is not just about finance department. It's not just about environment department. It's not just about compliance department. It's anybody can be an ESG leader in an organization. So no matter what background you are, our step 1 is designed for someone who are new, right? You want to have a holistic view. Then you come with our step 1 to get our ESG manager, and you are not in a rush to move into the step 2. After you attend, you go back your organization, you start to understand how you apply in your organization context. It can be a couple of months later. You think you're ready, then you move on to the step 2. So you are not in a rush that must complete 1, 2, 3 altogether. But of course, I read there's a comment that there's an ambitious delegate say that, how can I attend all together? Yeah, if you're ready, by all means. If you're expert, advanced, you can register all the 3 programs. But if you're new, then I would suggest that step 1 first, go back organization, couple of months later, move on to our step 2.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Poon. We are on top of the hour, but I want to close off with one final question, maybe to Wan Yang. You know, out of the 9 trends you shared today, which one do you think has the biggest and most immediate impact on ASEAN that we really need to focus on now?
Okay, that's still, I think the ESG has become the business as usual. Okay, I'm typing to the answer to one of the participants. She asked very good questions. Okay, so she said reporting is now business as usual. Why have we seen some areas of the globe drop in percentage in their report sharing? Okay,
Yes.
We haven't observed this phenomenon in the Asia Pacific, especially in ASEAN. You know, in this region, actually, we are still business as usual. We are actually improving more ESG reporting than before, for example, than 2 years ago. So, but you know, we actually, that's true. We have observed some drop in the, for example, North America, but not in Asia Pacific, especially in ASEAN. So I should say that I think we need to have a it's a fluctuation. Okay, this year or this couple of years, we see that the political trend or geopolitics, ESG reporting will be impacted. But in the longer term, as I said, explained, sustainability is the ultimate goal for the all human society. And sometimes I think we need to be front-loaded. We need to make sure we are prepared, well advanced. So right now, I think, first of all, we need to prepare our ESG reports and improve our ESG performance at this point in time. Secondly, I feel that because I, iterate for many times that ESG is not a standalone. It actually needs to be embedded into your corporate strategy. Make sure it's a win-win situation for your company. Okay, so for example, if you improve the working conditions in human rights for your employees, it will be easier for your company to keep talented people within your company, or easier for you to recruit talented people from outside. So it's a win-win situation. Do not regard it as a cost. It's an investment. Will ultimately, help your company to become more successful in the longer term.
Thank you, Wan Yang, and thank you, Mr. Poon, for very insightful sharing today. We received a lot of questions, but we may not have time to cover everything live. So what we plan to do is we'll put together a FAQ document, which we will send out after the webinar, along with the presentation deck as well. So thank you very much again for your time, but I would appreciate before you leave the webinar, please take 1 minute to complete our feedback poll so we know where to improve and how to reach out to people who are interested in our training program, especially today. Thank you very much for your time.